As Davao City continues to thrive and evolve, so must the spaces that serve its community's essential needs. Good day, my name is Anjanette Aisel Mugan, and I present to you my research title defense entitled A Proposed Funeral Complex Redefining Funeral Spaces in Davao City Through Funerary Architecture. Driven by a vision of designing tomorrow, future-proofing Filipino architecture for sustainable, resilience, and inclusive communities. In this chapter, this includes the background of the study, statement of the problem, research design, goals and objectives, hypothesis and assumption, as well as the significance of the study. According to Mary Jo Putney 2011, if death is inevitable, one should try to die well. In the grand theater of human existence, a significant question arises: why limit our designs and creations to enhancing the experiences of the living when we can extend our considerations to the departed? Our designs can shape the environment in which the dead are remembered and celebrated, as well as the affairs of the living. According to Gyangan, Boras and Liu, as the population grows, so does the number of deaths. This is because the number of births and deaths corresponds directly with the population size. The population of the Philippines has been steadily increasing over the decades, and along with it, the rates of mortality and morbidity. According to Philippine Statistics Authority, 24,240 deaths in Davao City all throughout the year 2022. Cities become more densely populated and available land may become scarce due to an escalating death toll. The time has come to reevaluate the purpose and potential of funeral homes and the funeral industry in our evolving society. This research seeks to contribute to the ongoing dialogue expanding the capabilities of funerary architecture and funeral industry, ultimately helping to shape a future where these institutions offer not only solace but also inspiration and support in the face of mortality. As for the next slide, we have here the statement of the problem. The funeral industry is evolving rapidly and deal with various challenges, including population growth, limited spaces, competitions, as well as pressures to adapt to cultural and economic changes, requiring more flexible spaces and services, and that is according to MacClimon 2020 and Han 2019. While these spaces must expand beyond their roles and adapt to emerging trends and societal needs, serving as multifunctional facilities that provide respectful resting places for the deceased and positively contribute to the well-being and development of communities. This research seeks to answer the following key questions. First is, what are the existing conditions of funeral homes in Davao City? Second, how can funerary architecture be relevant to meet the evolving needs of funeral homes in Davao City? And lastly, what design and planning strategies that could be incorporated from funerary architecture to develop a funeral complex in Davao City? So for the next slide, we have here the theoretical framework. The funeral complex proposal seeks to respond to the evolving needs of funeral homes in accommodating bereaved individuals and diverse cultures in honoring the dead. This will be accomplished by incorporating funerary architectural elements, and the study recognizes the need to consider the intervening variables influencing the design, such as the funerary architecture with sub-elements that focus on the psychology of space, cultural sensitivity, memorialization, and remembrance. With these intervening variables, the proponent will be able to develop a well-designed funeral complex that respond to the evolving needs of funeral homes in accommodating bereaved individuals in diverse cultures in honoring the dead through funerary architecture. As for the next slide, we have here the goals and objectives. Well, this research aims to improve funeral homes by investigating innovative solutions and providing helpful architectural guidelines that respond to the evolving needs of funeral homes in accommodating bereaved individuals in diverse cultures in honoring the dead through funeral architecture. thus enhancing funeral homes' overall experience and services. And for the objectives, we have here first is to evaluate the existing conditions of funeral homes in Davao City. Second is to assess the relevance of funerary architecture in meeting the evolving needs of funeral homes in Davao City. And lastly is to develop a comprehensive plan and design strategies incorporating funerary architecture to develop a funeral complex in Davao City. By achieving these objectives, the study aims to gain a thorough understanding of the methods in which funerary architectural elements in innovative approaches might be used to improve funeral facilities, making them more adaptable, compassionate, and accommodating to the changing needs of bereaved families and communities. As for the next slide, we have here the hypothesis and assumptions. The hypothesis is the integration of funerary architectural principles and innovative design strategies into the development of the proposed funeral complex will lead to the creation of modern, inclusive, and culturally responsive facilities that effectively cater to the evolving needs of funeral homes and the bereaved community, thus enhancing the overall funeral experience and memorialization process. As for the assumptions, the research assumes that there is a need for significant improvements and innovations within the funeral industry in Davao City to address the evolving demands and preferences of the community. It further assumes that funerary architecture and design principles have the potential to play a vital role in achieving these improvements by providing culturally relevant, sustainable, and inclusive solutions for funeral homes. Significance of the study. This research can impact how we approach the design of spaces associated with death and remembrance, emphasizing the importance of compassion and the connection between the living and the dead. Well, the study significantly benefits several groups of people and stakeholders, such as the bereaved individuals and families, funeral industry professionals, architects and urban planners, mental health professionals, as well as the academic and research community. As for the next slide, we have here the chapter 2. Well, the review of related studies serve as an important foundation that will support the backdrop of the study. In this chapter, it will provide an overview of selected studies, articles, journals, and authors that are relevant to the topic. In this review, the research proposal is broken down into three sections. The first section provides an overview of what are the existing conditions of funeral homes and how it can be developed beyond its traditional functionality by exploring the innovative development of funeral complex and its architectural trends. Well, the second section is that it will assess the relevance of the concept of funerary architecture. As for the next slide, we have here the chapter 2, the review of related literature. Well, this chapter serves as an important foundation that will support the backdrop of the study. In this chapter, it will provide an overview of selected studies, articles, journals, and authors that are relevant to the topic. In this review, the research proposal is broken down into three sections. The first section provides an overview of the Filipino traditional and funeral practices towards death. The second section provides an overview of the changing needs and challenges of funeral industry in the Philippines. And lastly is that it will assess the relevance of the concept of funerary architecture and its elements such as the psychology of space, cultural sensitivity, and memorialization in developing funerals beyond their traditional functionality. As for the next slide, we have here the chapter 2. The review of related literature serves as an important foundation that will support the backdrop of the study. In this chapter, it will provide an overview of selected studies, articles, journals, and authors that are relevant to the topic. In this review, the research proposal is broken down into three sections. The first section provides an overview of the Filipino traditional and funeral practices towards death. The second section provides an overview of the changing needs and challenges of funeral industry in the Philippines. And lastly is the third section that will assess the relevance of the concept of funerary architecture in its elements, such as the psychology of space, cultural, cultural sensitivity, and memorialization in developing funeral complex. As you can see here, the funeral culture, the Filipino culture to the funeral practices towards death. As for the next slide, we have here the first section. In this matrix, the Filipino funeral practices were divided into two, traditional and contemporary practices as of today. The funeral industry in the Philippines must balance modernity and tradition to serve a diverse, culturally rich population with a complex history of colonialism, well, by understanding Filipinos' perfect perspectives on death and preference for funeral rites, planners can help address challenges in the industry and create sustainable practices. Overall, promoting awareness about funeral planning and supporting traditional funeral practices emerge as priorities. As for the next slide, we have here the funeral industry as well as the funerary architecture. The funeral industry has undergone massive changes in recent decades in response to societal shifts and technological innovations. Several papers explore how the industry has innovated to meet the new demands. These papers suggest cremation and columbaria can be a practical solutions for overcrowding, but alternative proposals may better respect cultural traditions, especially in the Philippines. Combining funeral homes and columbaria offers efficiency, meaningful space, and opportunities to meet diverse needs. However, planners must carefully consider cultural expectations and environmental impact. With sensitive design and policy changes, integrated facilities can provide sustainable and community-centered solutions for the dead and the living. As society evolves, so do the preferences and expectations surrounding funeral practices. Funerary architecture can accommodate these changes and provide meaningful and personalized experiences for mourners. One aspect of the evolving funeral industry is the increasing demand for environmentally friendly practices, and that is according to Beard and Berger 2015. Funerary architecture plays a crucial role in meeting the evolving needs of the funeral industry by adapting to changing social, and technological trends. By providing adaptable and customizable spaces, funerary architecture creates meaningful and personalized experiences that honor the life and legacy of the deceased. Furthermore, advancements in technology have also influenced the funeral industry, and funerary architecture can adapt to incorporate these technological innovations. Overall, the funeral industry is changing rapidly, and funeral homes need to adapt to stay relevant. Funeral homes that offer diversified services embraces technology are more likely to succeed in the evolving funeral industry. In the next chapter, we have here the research design, research subjects, and the research instruments. The proposed methodologies is the research design of descriptive research. It is an approach or design used to systematically gather, document, and analyze data to provide a detailed and comprehensive description of a particular phenomenon, subject, or area of study. It aims to answer questions about what, where, when, and how, but not why. And that includes a descriptive survey that will be used to determine the funeral practices that are commonly being performed nowadays and the problems encountered in funeral establishments. Also, descriptive status will be used to evaluate the existing conditions of funeral establishments. This will help to evaluate the new trends being practiced nowadays. As for the research subjects, the respondents of this research are the citizens of Davao or the Davaoenos such as the bereaved individuals, as well as the funeral visitors. Also, the research subjects will be included the professionals or the experts in the field, such as the funeral homes managers and staffs, psychologists or sociologists, funeral planners, as well as the architects. As for the research instrument, primary sources will be included the interviews, survey questionnaires, and ocular inspection. As for the secondary sources, this includes the journals, websites, articles, and other internet sources. For the data gathering procedures, interviews will be conducted to the professionals or experts to gain understanding and insights from the field. And for the survey questionnaires will be randomly distributed for the bereaved individuals as well as for the funeral visitors to determine the funeral practices and respondents' concept of funeral establishments. Also, ocular inspection will be conducted to identify the existing conditions of the establishments and determine the successful design guidelines and strategies. And for the last slide, we have here the proposed outcome. By the end of this research, a proposed outcome would be a well-designed funeral complex that respond to the evolving needs of funeral homes in accommodating bereaved individuals and diverse cultures in honoring the dead through funerary architecture. And that ends my thesis title defense. Once again, this is Anjanette A. Salmugan from Architecture 5A. Thank you for listening and have a great day.